Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. It is the 29th of September, 2024. It's great to have you here. And it's it's always delightful to hear your whatever messages you put in the chat as we get started here. So Kevin, welcome. It's good to have you here. Matt, hello from Music City, USA. Aaron Precki just finished a 2-hour live stream of the Rodecaster video. Very good. We've got Fabian here from Bakersfield. Good to have you here. I'm actually here for the beginning of this. Welcome, Fachiri. Good to have you all here. All right, let's take a look at our agenda here. I am doing this session solo, so I'm gonna do my best here to stay on top of everything. Here's our agenda for today. Today, first of all, well, as always, this is a workshop which goes along with our courses over at school.learnlightandsound.com. You know the routine, most of you. If you've never been there before, if you sign up there, you will get the emails notifying you what these sessions are going to be about and exactly what time, and maybe every once in a while we have to skip a week, and we'll let you know that too, so you don't waste your time waiting or looking for it when it's not going to be there. And you can also submit questions ahead of time, so worth signing up if that's of interest to you. We're back to audio concepts of the week. We missed a couple weeks there, but we're back on today. And this week's audio concept is equal loudness contours, which actually goes really nicely with ear training. So that'll be our next thing. We'll do some ear training after that, talk a little bit about perspective, and then we do have a question that was submitted ahead of time as well. All right, with that, let's start with our audio term of the week, or audio concept of the week, equal loudness contours. What in the world is that? Well, let's take a look here. Let me just cue this up here. We're going to move over to the Mac. Okay. Here is an example of what are called equal loudness contours. And let's kind of just talk through what this is. So before we dive into the chart, here's the official definition over at Wikipedia, at least. But I also did some research. We looked up in, for those of you who've not seen this before, this is the Sound Reinforcement Handbook. It's an oldie. I think the second edition was in 1989. So surprisingly, though, the laws of physics do not change, and a lot of these things are still relevant today. So I was looking through that, and we came up with this. So here's what an equal loudness contour is. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. Let me just see if I can make it a little bigger here. An equal loudness contour is a measure of sound pressure level over the frequency spectrum for which a listener perceives a constant loudness when presented with pure steady tones. Let's break that down a little bit. What does that mean? So if this is the frequency spectrum here, so here are the low frequencies on the left, high frequencies on the right. Again, typically we assume that most humans, at least when they're children, can hear up to about 20 kilohertz with their ears, and then most of us can hear down a little bit below 100 hertz. We'll take a listen to some of those today and just see what we can hear and what we can't hear. And that's going to differ as we age. It differs from person to person, depends on the shape of your ears, you know, how the little receptors in your ear are working or holding up over time. But the idea here with the curves is that at 1 kilohertz, we perceive a certain loudness. So let's just look, whoops. Oh, it did what I didn't want it to do. Okay, here we go. 1 kilohertz, which is right here, 1000 hertz. If I want to hear a 100 hertz tone at the same perceived loudness, it sounds the same loudness to my ears, I actually have to go almost 20 dB higher with a pure 100 hertz tone. Okay, so our ears don't actually hear all frequencies at the same perceived loudness. It actually changes. And in fact, if you look at the higher frequencies here, some of these high frequencies actually sound quite a bit louder to us than at 1 kilohertz. So even at the same sound pressure level, it's going to sound louder. So or actually, I take that back. That's the inverse. To achieve the same perceived loudness, you have to boost the levels here in the high frequencies as well. So there's a little bit of a drop off. The only drop off is really here at like 3 kilohertz. That's gonna you actually don't need quite as much amplitude or sound pressure level at 3 kilohertz to get the same perceived loudness as 1 kilohertz. And then everything else beyond 1 kilohertz is pretty much louder. You need to push larger sound pressure levels for it to perceptually sound the same. So that's the concept of a equal loudness contour. And this was originally written about by Harvey Fletcher and Wilden Munson back in 1933. They published a paper called Loudness, Its Definition, Measurement, and Calculation in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America. And the idea here is, yeah, it's just basically what we just described here. They noticed by sampling with lots of different people that we don't hear the different frequencies. We have to use different sound pressure levels to achieve the same perceptual loudness across different frequencies. Okay, so actually let's do a little sample here. Let's do a little test. I'm going to hop on over to iZotope RX and let's make a new file here. And we'll just make this mono and 48 kilohertz. And I'm going to generate a 100 hertz tone at minus 20 dB. Okay, there's that. And we'll swap these two here. Okay, so let's listen to these. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a 1000 hertz tone or 1 kilohertz tone, and then a 100 hertz tone. Okay, so also get your headphones at a good, comfortable level. Yeah, get those headphones at a comfortable level, and then let me play it back for another few seconds here. Make sure you have your volume adjusted so you're comfortable, and then I'm going to switch over to the 100 hertz tone. Here we go. Okay, which of those sound louder to you? I'm curious which of those sound louder to you. So, all right. To me, the 1 kilohertz almost sounds ear-splitting, and the 100 hertz sounds like it's at a comfortable level. They're both, as we go back to the Mac here, notice this, amplitude-wise, get those out of the way. So here's the 100 hertz tone. Here's the 1 kilohertz tone. They're both at minus 20 dB, consistent. But I did see a little note here from Ficeri, my ears, in response to the 1 kilohertz tone. So there you go. All right. And Rag and Bone says first. In other words, the first one was louder. That's the 1 kilohertz. Same with Udo. Definitely. Audio Buff says, referring to a chart here, I think maybe that was referred to earlier in the chat. I'm not sure, but Audio Buff says that chart changed how I mix live audio. Humans are most efficient between 2 and 5 kilohertz, and that's the frequencies we can use to punch through the clutter of the room. Managing frequencies is so important. Absolutely. 100% there with you. Okay, so remember that equal loudness contours, we do not hear all frequencies at the same loudness. You actually have to if you play a 1 kilohertz sound and a 100 hertz sound at the same sound pressure levels, the 100 is going to sound much quieter than the 1 kilohertz. So just something to keep in mind. And that's true of, again, with those curves. If you look at the curves here, let's go switch back over to the Mac here. It's the same with these higher frequencies as well. You're going to have to boost them up if you want to really, really clearly hear them at the same perceived loudness. And the only distinction here is, yeah, you can see we were just talking. Audio Buff was talking about 2.5 kilohertz is where we're most efficient, and that's represented here. So that's right about that. Whoa, right about there, where there's this trough right here. That's actually sounds louder than at 1 kilohertz. So that's where we're most efficient. And so if you're really trying to cut through a mix, for example, and you really need something to stand out a little bit, you might need to make some room there. So in other words, if you have a whole ton of instruments and you're trying to get, for example, speech to come through, often what we do is we need to make room in the instrument tracks, kind of scoop them out a little bit. You maybe use a dynamic compressor or a dynamic multiband compressor or dynamic EQ to create some room there to reduce the amount of energy that those instruments are producing at around 2.5 kilohertz, so that the voices or whatever else, vocals, or if there's a lead instrument you want to get to cut through, you might want to do that as well. So those are some thoughts to keep in mind when it comes to equal loudness contours. Okay, so that's our concept of the week. Let's do a little bit of ear training. Let's practice. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to, let me just come back to my main camera here. I'm going to generate some tones, and I'm just using a regular sine wave tone generator. Let's start with 1 kilohertz, and I want you to, actually, let's start with 2.5 kilohertz. Let me create a 2.5 kilohertz tone. So that's 2,500 hertz. And get ready on your volume. Put your headphones on and get ready on your volume. I'm going to play this a little bit. Maybe turn your volume down a little bit, and then turn your volume up until the 2.5 hertz tone that we're going to play back is comfortable to you. It shouldn't hurt your ears. It should be comfortable. So let's go ahead and try that. And here we go. All right, y'all with me? I hope I gave you enough warning. Stay close to your volume. You may need it. So, all right. So that's 2.5 kilohertz. Now, I'm going to generate another tone here, and I want you to guess what that tone is. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and choose a tone and generate that right here. Okay, let's play that back. And just in the chat, go ahead and drop your best guess as to what frequency this tone is centered at. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and put your best guess in the chat here. What frequency was that centered around? So this is an opportunity for you to kind of start to get a better sense for where the frequencies lie. Robert says 800 hertz. Linda, 500 hertz. Steve, 600 hertz. Ian Craig, 440 hertz, which is a significant frequency. Very important. Fabian says 800. Kevin Broman, 400. Rag and Bone, 400. All right. There we go. Okay, got a couple more here. Here's Udo with 500 hertz. I'm curious for those. Well, good job, everybody. Let me just start there. Good work. Let's go ahead and switch over to the Mac, and I will show you exactly what it was. So here we go, back to the Mac. Here's my real-time spectrum analyzer. That was 400 hertz. I'll go ahead and play that again just really quickly. 400 hertz. Go ahead and kind of let your ears settle in on this. Okay, 400 hertz. If any of you are out there using a spectrum analyzer, I got to hand it to you for being clever, but try to do this with just your ears and see how we get there. But also congratulations to Kevin and Rag and Bone. You both hit it spot on, so good work on that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create my next tone here. Ian Craig, I thought it was an out-of-tune A, and indeed you're right, it is an out-of-tune A. So A440, 440 hertz is typically the A that many string musicians will tune to when they're tuning their A string. So there we go. All right. There you go, perfect pitch as a musician. So yeah, definitely out of tune if you're looking for that A. Okay, let me create another tone here and we will see where we're all coming out on that. Okay, here's our next tone. Be ready on your volume again, just in case. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and put your best guess in the chat there again. And while you're doing that, Camille, thanks so much for the super chat. Very much appreciate that. And 2 coffees and apple pie, thank you. Appreciate that so much. All right, the guesses are coming in already. Here's Linda Lawson with 10 kilohertz. Kevin Broman, 10 kilohertz. Robert Harker, 8 kilohertz. Love those 8Ks. Fabian Vasquez, 10 kilohertz. Steve, Ian Craig says 4,500 hertz. Okay. Steve, 9 kilohertz. Udo, 8 kilohertz. As long as the coffee is damn fine. All right. Rag and Bone, I didn't hear it. Okay. If you didn't hear it, you might want to check what you're listening on. That can also make a difference, especially if you're listening on maybe laptop speakers or a phone speakers, tablet speakers. Sometimes it's going to be hard to hear these kind of things on those. But here's the answer for everybody. Let's go back over to the Mac. This was 8 kilohertz. So good job. There were several of you, many of you were very close. We had some that were spot on. There's Robert at 8 kilohertz, good work. Udo is also spot on at 8 kilohertz. So good job, everybody. That's our 8 kilohertz. So we're going to go ahead and choose another one here. We're going to do this at good speed because we're going to switch over and actually start doing it on dialogue in just a minute. We're going to start ear training on dialogue, not doing the same thing here. But let's go and choose another frequency. Okay, here we go for our next frequency. Hand on the volume. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and put your best guess in the chat there for that one. Definitely a lower frequency this time. All right. Here we go. Robert Harker, 8K is the upper range of my hearing childhood illness. Oh, you're spot on there though. Good work. Udo says, good training. Thanks. We can all use a little bit of practice here. Ian Craig says it's a C. Ian thinks in terms of musical notes. Here, Rag and Bone is saying 100 hertz. Linda says 75 hertz. Matt, it's down there. 50 hertz, Price is Right rules. Fabian. So Fabian's trying not to go over, staying below. So you're doing a good job there. Steve says 100 hertz. Kevin says 40 hertz. Ward says 80 hertz. Audio Buff says 200 hertz. Robert Harker, 300 hertz. Da Vinci Girl says 100 hertz. And Udo says 40 hertz. Okay, and the reveal, the big reveal. It was 75 hertz, friends. 75 hertz. A lot of folks very close there. Linda, congratulations. Linda gets a gold star. 75 hertz, spot on. Very nicely done. All right, we had a lot of other folks that were very close here. Matt says it's down there, and he's right. Fabian, 50 hertz, Price is Right rules. So close. Looks like Linda beat you out if we're doing the Price is Right rules, but so close. Good work. Steve, very close at 100 hertz. Kevin said 40 hertz, a little bit higher, but pretty, definitely in the right range. Ward said 80 hertz. Oh, so close. Audio Buff, 200 hertz. Definitely in the range, down in the low end there. Da Vinci Girl, very close at 100 hertz. And Arch's Garage, 60 hertz, very close as well. Good work. Gwen says 50.1 hertz if we're going by Price is Right rules. So close, Gwen. So close. Looks like Linda got you this time there. So anyway, and Linda, well deserved, like a boss. Good work there. All right, let's do another one here. Let me choose another frequency just to get our chops practiced. All right, friends. Again, hands on the volume, turn it down just a little bit and kind of work your way up into it. I'm just going to give you a warning here. All right. All right, here it goes. You ready? Hand on the volume, pull it down just a little bit, and then ease up into it. Here we go. Ow! Hopefully I gave you enough warning there. All right, with the guesses are coming in already. Kevin Broman, 1,000. Are you sure? Is that your final answer? Oh, here we go. That's his final answer. 10 kilohertz. Okay. Good work. Robert says, an itch at the back of my skull, 11 kilohertz. Ooh, okay. Rag and Bone, 1,200. Do you mean 12,000, maybe? Audio Buff, 8 kilohertz. Fabian says 12,500. Are we doing Price is Right rules again still, Fabian? Just checking. Matt says 9,999 hertz. Ooh, okay. The model point, 7 kilohertz. Oh, I forgot to switch, so you saw it the whole time. Okay. Yeah, 10 kilohertz. But there are some people here who were actually trying 12 kilohertz, Da Vinci Girl 12 kilohertz, Linda 12 kilohertz. Yes, 12 kilohertz or 12,000 hertz. Very good. My mistake on that one, I didn't switch back over to the camera. This is what happens when you stream alone. Friends don't let friends stream alone. These kind of things can happen. Okay, we're going to do another one because I just blew that one. So here we go. I'm going to choose another one. Let's go. There we go. Okay, I'm just checking. You cannot see this. You cannot see Mac right now. All right, hands on the volume knobs, everybody, people. Pull it down just a little bit and then ease up into it. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and drop your guesses in the chat here. This was not, I didn't reveal this time. I didn't make that mistake. So this is the real deal. Check in your ears. Where do you think we were hertz-wise this time? All right. Fabian is saying 6,000. Linda's saying 7 kilohertz. Da Vinci Girl is saying 400 hertz. Oh. Let's see. Kevin's at 3 kilohertz. The Model Point 3,000 hertz. Audio Buff 550 hertz. Robert 1.2 kilohertz. E natural, I assume. Ian. According to my iPhone. Somebody's using a real-time analyzer there. Audio Buff. Udo guessed 600 hertz. Sorry, E flat. Very good. Thank you, Ian. Eric says 800 hertz. Arch's Garage, 440 hertz or an octave above. Okay. Steve says 750 hertz. Who says I can see maybe 600 hertz? And then Rag and Bone Puppet Theater, 800 hertz. Okay, big reveal. Here we go. 600 hertz, my friends. That was 600 hertz. I'll just play that again. Oh, that was the iPhone speaker. Yeah, fair point, Audio Buff. Oh, wait. Price is Right, $5.99. All right, here we go. 600 hertz. Okay, friends, it's time to do one more, and then we're going to move over to dialogue. So let me just get a frequency in here. Just checking you're looking at me, not my Mac. Here we go. All right. Okay, hands on the volume knobs again. Let's go ahead and turn it down just a little bit and then ease up into it, just so you're kind to your ears. And here we go. Okay, put your guess in the chat there. Let's see where you're at. Kevin Broman had me in one ear and the wife in the other. So it's going to be tough to do it that way, but that's impressive. Quite impressive if you can do that. Robert has a good question here. Well, there was an app at one time I reviewed many, many years ago. It wasn't so much tones, it was actually playing back music, and you had to guess what kind of EQ adjustment they were making to the music. So they play the music initially, and then after the EQ, and you had to kind of guess what they had done. Don't remember what it was called, though, to be honest. It was so many years ago. It was some number of years ago, probably like 7 or 8 years ago at least. But the guesses are also trickling in here. We've got Steve at 950 hertz, Linda Lawson at 900 hertz, Rag and Bone Puppet Theater 1000 hertz, Hampton at 500, the Model Point at Model Point. Is it Model Point? Is it Model Point? Okay. 1500 hertz, Da Vinci Girl 1200 hertz, Udo 900 hertz, Kevin Broman 1 kilohertz. Matt Ruff having nice studio monitors, 749 Price is Right rules. Okay. Locking yourself in there. Eric is at 800 hertz. Ian Craig is F sharp. We may need to check that, Ian. You may actually be very close here. Audio Buff says 800 hertz. I'm just going to keep typing in 800 until it's right. Okay, everybody, here's the big reveal. Switching back over to the Mac, this was 700 hertz this time. 700 hertz. So we get, let's see, Hampton was at 500. Who was our closest here? Matt was at 749, but he was playing Price is Right rules, which means you can't go over. So there you go. Oh, and here's a great suggestion here from Kevin. Kevin, thanks for the audio. There is an app called Quiz Tones that works well. Very cool. I'm going to look that up while we're here. Quiz Tones. That'll be a good little thing to try your hand at. So if you go to the App Store here, quiz tones. Not quiz tomes, quiz tones in this case. All right, EQ ear training. Learn to use EQ like a pro. Okay, there's one. There may be some others in the App Store, but I'll give that one a try here sometime. So thanks for that, Kevin. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Matt, you went over and you insisted on the Price is Right rules. So I'm sorry, my friend. But don't worry, there's always redemption. You have a stream later on today. Okay, friends, now it's time to listen to some dialogue and for me to make some changes to it and for you to use your ears to figure out what it was that what I did to the sound here. So this is the audio we're going to be listening to. I am actually when we get to the perspective section, this will make more sense, but I'm in the process of reviewing a new recorder from Tascam called the Tascam FR-AV2. It is a 2 XLR combo input mini recorder with 32-bit float, writes to micro SD cards, can also record in 24-bit up to 192 kilohertz, and it has some really neat secrets up its sleeve as well. So that's what we're going to be listening to here, is the actual dialogue, the raw dialogue track from that recording. All right, all right, here we go. So let's play back a little bit so you can hear where we're starting. Just use your ears, volume down, and then kind of ease up into it. Here we go. C cards, class 10 or higher. So you can buy some of the more recent, much larger capacity cards. You could record on this for weeks on a single card if you're going to go that way. What's unique about the FR-AV2, it also has some processors. It has a limiter. All right, there's where we're starting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some EQ here. And I want you to tell me. I'm going to start with a cut. So I'm going to do a cut. And I'll make this first one pretty extreme. So you'll definitely hear it. So let's go ahead and do a cut. All right. Okay, what I'm going to do is while I'm playing it back, this is when the EQ is turned on, and this is when the EQ is turned off. So one finger up for EQ on, hand in an O or a 0 when it is off. So we're going to start with it on. Get my headphones. Here we go. It has a compressor, equalizer, noise gate. This is something that you don't find on a lot of other recorders in this kind of class. So those are really nice features. Here's a sample of each of those. The FR-AV2 also has an inbuilt timecode generator, a proper temperature compensator crystal oscillator. It also has input and output ports for the timecodes, separate ports. This is fantastic for a recorder of this size. I'm going to talk about this more in context of the Zoom F3. This is superior to the Zoom F3 when it comes to most timecode workflows. So if timecode is very important to your workflow, for me, the Tascam FR-AV2 is a much better choice than the Zoom F3. In addition to that, we tested the timecode clock here. We did a jam sync with a Tentacle Sync E timecode generator, separated them, ran them for 8 hours, came back, and the frames were exactly in sync. All right, let's go ahead and put your guesses in there. Again, there's a cut at, and you just need to identify what frequency we made that cut at. So if you go ahead and put your guesses in the chat, we can do that. All right. Well, Linda, I'm glad you're having fun because I am too. For us audio nerds, this is a fun time. Arch's Garage was going to say a C sharp, but it's been years not playing music. So my speakers have a spectrum analyzer, but the type is too small for me to see it across the room. All right. Eric says a mini Tascam. Wow. And Udo says timecode is key for my use case for the Tascam. It's a pretty good time code. It's better definitely than a Zoom F3, for example. And actually, I would say even better than the Zoom F6 as well. Tascam fights back. Creative Greats Visuals says, please compare the noise to the Zoom F3 in your review of the new Tascam if you can. It is, we did do some measurements there as well. So yes, that will be in there. All right, Linda says that this EQ that we did was very subtle in her ears. Okay, yep. Sounds to me like the EQ removes 1 kilohertz to 1.2 kilohertz. Good guess there, Udo. Hampton says a high cut. Okay. And that's very broad, but you're not wrong, but it's very broad as well. Steve says a 2.5 kilohertz cut. 1 kilohertz. Hampton is a little bit more specific there. 1 kilohertz. Matt says a 1 kilohertz as well. Okay. Any other guesses out there before we make the big reveal here? So exciting. All right, here we go back to the Mac. Big reveal. That was a cut at 2081 hertz. A cut of 11.2 dB is fairly extreme. If you're not hearing that, that's okay. But I would say you probably need maybe some better speakers to help you hear that. A lot of times what I find is when I'm doing very meticulous work on dialogue audio, I find that sometimes I need to switch back and forth between the headphones and the near field monitors. I'll do the very meticulous work in the headphones and then immediately take them off and listen to them through the monitors and then go back into the headphones if I need to. But that's my general approach there. All right, so let's do another one of those, making sure that I switch out of the Mac so you can't see what I'm doing. All right. Learning a lot from guessing wrong. That is good. And yeah, Steve, good job. Very close there at 2.5 kilohertz. Linda says, go Steve. I'm with her. Go Steve. Good work. Robert Harker, just a note, the QuizTones is an iPhone app, or an iOS app. So it doesn't show that on the Android store. Evidently, it's something else on Android. All right. Matt was not going over again, and indeed you did not. A good word, or good point. And K-Rai says, good way to do it. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for being part of our little community here. Okay, let's choose another frequency. I'm going to do another cut. Again, as I hold my finger up, that means the EQ is on, engaged. And when I go like this with the 0, that means it is not engaged. So let me just go ahead and find another frequency here. Let's keep a nice round number for you this time. All right, here we go, friends. Let's get our headphones on. Have your hand on the volume knob so that it doesn't jar you here, and then ease up into it. Here we go. There's nothing out of sync there, so you're going to be just fine in terms of accuracy. Now, if you buy the add-on Bluetooth adapter, the AKBT2, you can control the recorder via an iOS or Android app, and at the same time, you can stream audio for monitoring from the recorder to Bluetooth headphones or a Bluetooth speaker if you wanted to do that. So this is actually a step forward. I have not seen any other recorder that can do that, and so that's pretty innovative. Nice job, Tascam. In addition to that, the sound quality is actually quite good. You can choose 3 different quality levels, and if you're operating reasonably close to the recorder itself with your headphones, you can get very high quality audio. Now, to temper all that, it is Bluetooth, so there is some latency. So what that means in practical terms, if you're wearing headphones and you're in the space where the recording is taking place, you're going to hear in just in the ambient space, the sound, let's say, for example, dialogue, someone talking, and then there's going to be a delay before you hear it in your headphones. So you need to be aware of that. This is largely a Bluetooth issue. Okay. That one's a little trickier. Go ahead and put your guesses in there. Looks like some of them here. Oh, Hampton says something interesting. May have been more apparent with a female voice. You're not necessarily wrong there. Creative Greats wants to know why I listen on monitors and headphones. We'll come right back to that. It started at 1K just for the record. Okay. Oh, DaVinci Girls is looking for a guitarist. So if you are a guitarist, there we go. Udo says 450 hertz. Okay. Remember, this is a cut. Robert says an upper mid cut. Okay. 700 hertz. Good guess. Linda says 400 hertz. Robert says I won't embarrass myself. This one is definitely a trickier one. Definitely a trickier one. Steve says that's tough. Not sure at all. And then Tim says 6 dB dip around 1.3 kilohertz. And Matt just clarifies the 1 kilohertz was for the last one. Yes, got it. Follow here. Okay, this one was definitely trickier. I want to give you a, let me play it for you again, and let me give you a little tip what to listen for. Listen to the sibilants. Listen for the S's and the C's, any of those higher frequency sounds. So let me play this for you again. Listen in the S and the C range really carefully. Here we go. Or a digital device issue. So just keep that in mind. We did a whole series of tests with radio frequency generating objects near the recorder, mostly, well, we did several tests with RF generating devices near the recorder, so wireless transmitters and phones, and we were not able to pick up any sort of RF interference, both with a UHF system or with the consumer 2.4 gigahertz systems or with a mobile phone. So the Tascam FR-AV2 appears to be pretty nicely radio frequency shielded. Okay, are you hearing a difference in the S's in particular? Let me know in the chat here. Matt says 400 to 600 hertz. DaVinci says, girl says there is a new standard for Bluetooth, absolute zero latency. They just did start to produce the first chips. That's good, because the existing chips are not that fast. Tim says, just joining and didn't get to hear it all, but definitely a high cut. I'm listening, this is Dan splaining. I'm listening over AirPods and I don't hear any difference. Maybe that's why the headphone recommendation. All right. Linda's changing her answer to 800 hertz. Okay. Tim says, okay, I'm changing my guess to a 10 kilohertz roll off. Good. Now we're getting closer here. Kevin, 4 kilohertz. It sounds like a boost in the high frequencies, so I'm still guessing a cut around 450. Okay. Cut at 1K, 2 kilohertz. And Rag and Bone says, yes, difference is in the S. So sibilance, just for reference, sibilance typically occurs, depending on the voice, usually around 5 kilohertz, between 5 and 10 kilohertz is my experience. A lot of times 5 and 8 kilohertz, somewhere in there. So that should give you a clue. Let me go ahead and switch over to the Mac here. This was a 7,000 hertz cut of 12 dB. Now remember, we're starting to operate in a range here where our hearing is not as sensitive as 1 kilohertz. So these are a little bit more nuanced to pick them up and to be able to hear them. But this is a case where those S's sounded duller. They didn't have the sharpness to them. They didn't have the sizzling sound that sibilance often has. So this would be a very crude way to address overwhelming sibilance if you needed to. Normally a de-esser would do a similar type thing, but it would do it in a dynamic fashion. That is to say, it wouldn't do a cut until there was an S, or the sibilant sound, and then it would just apply a little bit of attenuation to that particular frequency. So that is that's where we're at, 7,000 hertz. So let's do one more. Again, switching back to the main camera here so that you cannot see this. Let's do a cut here. And we're gonna narrow the cut a little bit this time. All right, here we go. Headphones on, adjust your volume down, And here we go. Shielded, so you're not going to get interference from those electronic devices. The recorder does have a mid-side stereo decoder and also monitoring function. So if you're into mid-side recording out in the field, this can do that for you as well. In terms of power, there are a couple of different options. Number one, 3 AA batteries. We put 3 Eneloop AA batteries, nickel metal hydride rechargeables. We turned it on, recording one channel with phantom power turned on at 24-bit, and we got 4 hours and 28 minutes of power time. Respectable. You can also power this via the USB-C port. So if you have a USB battery bank and you want to power it via that, you can do that as well. The FRA V2 comes with a 1-year warranty, and it is priced at $399 USD at the time of this review. Also, the add-on Bluetooth module runs $69 US, and I would say that's a pretty nice add-on. It's worth it. Okay, friends, put your guesses in the chat. Remember, this was a cut. This was a cut, to be clear. An EQ cut. The question is, at what frequency did we cut to get that result? Okay, starting to come in here. Okay. Robert says lower mid, upper bass boost or mid-range cut. Linda Lawson says a cut at 500 hertz. Udo says 500 to 600 hertz. Hampton says 800 hertz cut. And Steve, 700 hertz cut. Okay, good. Kevin, 1 kilohertz cut. Good. Remember, this was a pretty extreme cut, almost 13 dB. So there was a lot cut there. All right. I'm so glad you said this, Robert. This was going to be my point here. Interesting how a cut sounds like a boost in a different range. And that is one of the secrets that is really important to learn about EQ, is that if you feel like some frequencies are missing, it might actually make sense to cut some of the other frequencies around it to let that one come out a little bit. So let's reveal here what we did. Here we go. All right, this was a 12.9 decibel cut at 400 hertz. So isn't it interesting how you can cut 400 hertz kind of in the mids, and it sounded a little bit bassier and almost a little muffled to my ear. So there we go. All right, so here's Tim. I'm thinking 12 dB cut around 680 hertz, very close. Very close. Kevin said, I was thinking this was a 450 hertz boost. Actually, no, cut at 400, which made the lower frequencies sound more boosted. And then for creative greats, what's an EQ cut mean? So EQ stands for equalizer. Cut means we are reducing the frequencies or the amplitude, the loudness. Let's say amplitude. We're attenuating or lowering certain frequencies in the overall sound. So that's what that was. Yeah, Kevin says this is way harder than the pure tones, and absolutely. But it is also hopefully really helpful for ear training. So when you are in post-production or even in production, hopefully getting these kind of exercises will help you be able to solve problems, especially when you're doing live sound. You'll need to do that. But in post-production too, for those that are not doing live, this is super helpful because you start to be able to, you have an easier job of opening an EQ. It doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. You're like, something feels wrong in the low mids somewhere, or I've got too much low mids, and I can come in and I can cut that. So hopefully that was helpful. All right, let's go back to, we did have one question that came in that's relevant actually to this, that came in from David, and that is, like many people who have spent many years as a sound recordist or simply had misspent youths with excessive exposure to high sound pressure levels, my hearing is not now what I'd like it to be. My deafness is frequency related, but fortunately similar in left and right ears. My question is, how do professional engineers cope with this sort of problem? Does anyone know of any literature on this topic? I would also call on, I know Matt, you might have some input here. But here's my sense. Well, a couple things I can tell you. I think taking care of yourself is really, really important. So plenty of rest, sleeping 7 or 8 hours of sleep, getting 7 or 8 hours sleep a night. I think one thing that I read a while back, I definitely don't have all the answers. I can say this. I did experience some hearing loss some time ago now. I had a head injury and I lost some of the hearing in my left ear. So it was interesting. I got hit on the right rear side of my head and I lost some of the ability to hear in my left ear. So my ears are actually quite different. In my left ear, I cannot hear below 300 hertz, which is very strange. So for me, hearing bass is a little bit challenging at times. But it actually changed over time. I have been back to do some additional hearing tests by an audiologist, and while generally the general thinking is that, once you lose the ability to hear, you don't get it back, period. And maybe it had to do with the head injury in particular, but I did gain some of that back. There was actually a substantial improvement over the course of a couple of years in recovery from that head injury. But there are other things as well. There was a book I read quite some time ago, and it doesn't refer specifically to hearing. So it's a more general thing where it was talking about your nervous system kind of regenerating itself, like rebuilding some of the receptor cell, the neurons. And the book is called Spark. And the whole premise of that book basically is if you get cardiovascular exercise that puts your heart rate into the orange zone, so not like all out about to die, but more than just a gentle stroll. If you get your heart rate and keep it up in that range from, I think, 20 minutes a day or something like that, or 20 minutes 3 times a week, that your body's ability to repair its nervous system improves. So that's one. It's a popular science book. I think they have some references if you want to go to the source material, David. That one's worth a look. But if anyone else has other suggestions, that would be really, really, really helpful. There's also this point here. So the question is like hearing loss or sound ringing constantly? Those are kind of some different things. Robert asks, do you think in frequencies or audio bands? I know you need to go to a frequency, but I think in audio and frequency bands, I do. I don't worry too much about the numbers themselves. We're just doing that so that we have a reference here. But when I'm doing it, I definitely rely on my ears more. And that's why I often will get into the headphones to hear those really, really nuanced differences. So yeah, I'm not too worried about what those numbers are in the end. I just want to make sure that I'm getting somewhere that sounds better. So I'm with you. And usually it does help just to think more in bands in terms of specific frequencies. Tim says, yes, lack of sleep definitely affects my tinnitus or tinnitus, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Udo has another interesting point here too. So David, hopefully that was helpful. I can go ahead and switch back to the main screen here. Hopefully that was helpful. And again, if any of you have suggestions or anywhere you can point David for additional information, that would be really, really appreciated. So thank you, David, for the question. It's a great question. Very much related here as well. All right. All right. Udo says, cut resonances is always my goal. Wondering how well the new waves curves equator helps. Hunting for the resonances. So I just use the old-fashioned tool of boosting a frequency, keeping it pretty narrow, and sweeping back and forth until I hear something really, really harsh pick up. That works pretty well, but it would be interesting to see how this new waves curves equator helps with that as well. All right, let me just, there was one other thing I wanted to show you on the Mac, actually. Let me go back to the Mac here. And this is a really interesting thing too. One thing that you can do, if you're sweetening audio, one thing that can be really helpful is to use what is called a tilt EQ. And this is an example of a tilt EQ. We're using the FabFilter Pro Q3. But the idea here is that when you go in and you start kind of, oh, I'm not showing it to you. I pressed the wrong one. Dangers of doing a live stream solo. Here is a tilt EQ. This is the FabFilter Pro Q3. And this allows you to, instead of going in and changing just an individual frequency, it has a sort of seesaw kind of effect. And you can choose where you want the center point to be. And you can choose how extreme you want to go. But the idea that with this is that instead of going in and, for example, going and tweaking an individual frequency, which can actually sound pretty unnatural, sometimes what can be better is just using a tilt EQ like this instead. And let me just play a little bit of this for you here, just so you can hear. So here, for example, it would be cutting all the lows up to 1 kilohertz and then boosting the highs beyond that. Let me just show this to you while I'm playing back and you can hear what it does. Come back over here. It's to micro SD, SDHC, and SDXC cards, class 10 or higher. So you can buy some of the more recent, much larger capacity cards. You could record on this for weeks on a single card if you're going to go that way. What's unique about the FRA V2, it also has some processors. It has a limiter, it has a compressor, equalizer, noise gate. This is something that you don't find on a lot of other recorders in this kind of class. So those are really nice features. Here's a sample of each of those. The FRA V2 also has an inbuilt time code generator, a proper temperature compensator crystal oscillator. It also has input and output ports for the time codes, separate ports. This is fantastic for a recorder of this size. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. I actually find that pretty. It's a much more subtle way to adapt, to kind of adjust the voice. I think it's definitely worth it on dialogue audio to experiment with this. I would still go, and if there's a massive resonance in the recording because of that voice is interacting with the specific room or that microphone or whatever it may be, it's definitely worth still doing that resonance cut. But overall, the tilt EQ can be really, really nice. And FabFilter Pro Q3 is not the only one. There are others out there as well. So definitely worth a check there. All right, so let's go through the chat here and see what we've got. Fachiri has some questions about antennas for bag use. Does feeding power to a passive butterfly antenna have any negative or positive effects? And 2, is there an alternative antenna to the RF venue diversity fin? Well, first of all, I don't think you want to add power to a passive antenna because that's not how they're designed to use. I don't know exactly what you're going to be looking at, but I don't know anything beyond that. Fachiri's short version, I don't know the answer to question 1. Question 2, is there an alternative to the RF venue diversity fin? So absolutely, a lot of production sound mixers will use 2 LDPA or LPDA, log periodic dipole array antennas. Those are the shark fins. Instead of using the diversity fin, they will use 2 shark fins instead. So those will be their diversity antennas 1 and 2. And the idea with the diversity antenna with a true diversity wireless system is that in real time it will switch to whichever of the antennas is getting a cleaner signal in essence. And so that's why they usually use 2 of them. So the advantage of the RF venue diversity fin is that it's compact. I have it on my very small sound cart, and that just makes it easy because I can just leave it attached. I'm not having to detach it, because when you are working with 2 LPDAs or 2 shark fin antennas, you generally want to space them out a little bit. So those are some thoughts there. Hopefully that is helpful. Okay. The chat is alive now. Udo, I don't know the answer. That's curious. If fasting leading to autophagy helps getting some hearing back, I have a slight drop around 4 kilohertz. Interesting. Here's one from Fachiri about hearing loss or changes. Andrew Huang, a musician YouTuber, has made videos about him losing the ability to hear some frequencies, which makes things sound good and bad to him, but bad or good to others. And that actually is, I think that's pretty universal actually. Even without hearing loss, most of us hear things a little bit differently. And so we do have preferences that differ from each other, and that's okay. I think it's important to recognize that as well, that we all hear a little bit differently. So if we hear something that sounds amazing, that's why there's still channels with reviews of microphones. It's like, well, does Curtis really need to be reviewing microphones 10 years later? And I haven't reviewed all microphones, but there comes a point where it's like, you know what? Find one that sounds good and probably lean into it, go with it. Audio Buff says, David, I have my ears tested to see how my ears are aging. As I get older, I've noticed some changes. I know where I'm lacking. I can make sure I'm not adding back too much at those frequencies. All right. And Matt says that's i.e. Why I'm retired. Edwin says, what is the name of this recorder again? We'll have a review coming out of this. Is the Tascam FR-AV2. AV as in audio visual. So pretty cool little recorder, just for reference. We're past time, but Danny's not here. Here's the F3, Zoom F3. And here is the Tascam. So they're both pretty small. The Tascam is maybe not as chunky this way. It doesn't have these bands on it. So it's just a little bit bigger, but has a much bigger screen. But more to come. We should be releasing that review. I tried to do it this week and didn't make it. Unfortunately, Emma was a little under the weather. She's better now, but she was under the weather, so we got a little bit behind. But I'll be filming the B-roll and putting together the rest of that this week, and Emma will be making the thumbnail for us. So that's that. All right. Knock boy, what sort of entry-level cameras would be sufficient for conducting two-person cross-key lighted YouTube interviews with zero crew and a very portable set and forget setup? One Canon EOS RP currently. I don't know how you do it with zero crew. I think you mean you're operating it all yourself. iPhones or an Android phone with Android phone with a really good camera, I guess. Panasonic has some micro Four Thirds cameras, kind of entry level cameras that are good. I think it's the I don't even know what it is now. I'm not in that space, but G9 or something like that. I don't know. I use the Panasonic GH5s. Fours. I don't know. No, 5s. 4. Unless I'm out of the camera space. That is to say, I'm not focused on it too much. So mostly what I'm filming with now is Canon C70. But I would think one of the small micro Four Thirds cameras would be sufficient. Or if you want to go with phones, that would be another way to do it. All right. The tilt is pretty nice. Tilt for the win. Absolutely. All right, friends. Thank you so much for coming by, for getting your ear training for this week. Get out there, make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.